Well, the high cost of prescription drugs here in the U.S. has caused some surprising and potentially risky side effects, with more Americans buying their drugs outside our borders. Is it worth the risk to play a kind of prescription roulette? Scott Cohn is with us now with more on this troubling story. Scott.
And it is not a clear-cut case, Bill. The drug companies say part of what you're paying for with the high prices is safety, which doesn't explain the low prices in other parts of the world. The alternative sellers claim they can get you safety too, but at a much lower cost. So is it cost versus risk? Here's what we found.
You are wrong, totally wrong.
We're not wrong. The prescription Lipitor we purchased undercover from this business in Florida and had tested is different from the Lipitor we got from a traditional pharmacy.
Hi, I need to get this filled.
But like just about everything else involving prescription drugs, this story is a lot more complicated than that. We had gone undercover to look at the explosion of what are known as facilitators, basically brick-and-mortar versions of internet pharmacies, offering prescription drugs at big discounts. They claim to be legal, but drug companies say they're exploiting a legal loophole.
We found these businesses all over the place here in Florida, where a lot of seniors are on expensive prescription drugs, but might not feel comfortable ordering them online. So the idea is I can take a prescription like this, and I can bring it in, they'll fill it, they'll ship it to my house at a huge savings.
Discounts as much as 80%, or so they claim. Some people, like this woman who wouldn't give her name, swear by these places.
People need to save money, and drugs prices are too high. It's simply economics.
But the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy says ordering from a facilitator carries the same risks as ordering from a website, and those risks, they say, are considerable.
Of the more than 10,000 sites that we've looked at, 97% of those sites are illegal or rogue sites and are operating dangerously.
Often selling counterfeit drugs, which is where this lab in Groton, Connecticut comes in. It's run by Pfizer, and we got rare access. Here, they can test a pill with pretty much the push of a button.
So this fails. It's like this is a counterfeit Rager tablet that we ran.
Pfizer Director of Global Security Brian Donnelly is a former FBI agent and a pharmacist.
The big motivation here is patient safety. We want to make sure that when a patient gets a Pfizer medication, that they get a Pfizer medication, not some knockoff.
Some of what they're finding online is frightening.
They'll use things like brick dust to hold it together. They'll use wallboard, sheetrock to hold these things together because they compress well.
To see if the facilitators are any different from the online sellers, Pfizer agreed to help us put them to the test. We ordered brand name Lipitor at 4 locations in Florida, and we filled 2 more prescriptions at traditional pharmacies in New York and New Jersey.
I need to get this prescription filled. I don't know if I need the brand name though. I'm not sure if you have it.
The first difference is obvious, the price. The facilitators charged us, on average, $1.71 per pill. The pharmacies, more than 4 times that.
$182.74.
But when we got our shipments, there was another difference. The pills from the pharmacies are oblong, but look at the pills from the facilitators. They're round. We sent samples of each to Pfizer's lab, removing all the packaging to keep the test blind. Think you know how the test came back? Think again. According to Pfizer's own reports, the oblong Lipitor from the traditional pharmacies came back authentic. No surprise. But what about the round Lipitor that came in the mail? Turns out, according to Pfizer's own analysis, it's authentic too. Authentic Pfizer-manufactured drug product, the report says, but not intended for distribution in the U.S. That's right, Pfizer makes 2 kinds of Lipitor, the drug sold in the U.S. and the drug sold overseas at a fraction of the price.
I think a lot of people would be surprised that Pfizer makes more than one kind of Lipitor.
We make products around the world.
Pfizer's Brian Donnelly says the overseas Lipitor is the same drug and the same quality.
Whatever product Pfizer makes is going to be a top shelf product.
So what's the risk to a patient, beyond saving a lot of money, of ordering this way?
Well, the risk is any time you go outside of the U.S. System, you're circumventing a system that's put in place for your safety.
He says the higher price in the U.S. buys you the FDA and what he calls a closed system to keep out substandard or counterfeit drugs. It happens to also keep out the less expensive overseas Lipitor. And June Booty at Canadian Discount RX Services says that's what's really going on here.
We save a lot of money for a lot of elderly people. I have a lot of happy customers.
An attorney for two of the other facilitators we visited said they do try to make sure that they order from overseas pharmacies that follow similar standards to those required by the FDA. The owner of the fourth business says he requires all his suppliers to be licensed in their home country. Pfizer, meanwhile, points out that it has spent more than $7 billion in just the last 5 years to help people afford their prescriptions through an assistance program called RX Pathways.
Fascinating. So if somebody decides they do want to buy their prescription drugs online, are there steps they can take to make sure they get the real thing?
Well, they need to make certain, first of all, that they know that they're taking a calculated risk. But there are legitimate internet pharmacies. The National Association of Boards of Pharmacies does a check on this, and on their website, nabp.net, you can check out the internet pharmacies.
Okay.
All right, so Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You've worked on this story for 6 months. You know everything there is to know about this now. Would you ever buy these off-market drugs because they're cheaper? Are you tempted?
Well, I think that anybody that's looking at the high price and wants to take their medication but can't afford it has got to look at this and look at the results that we found. But it still is a calculated risk. As Pfizer points out, as the NABP points out, they may send you good product one time and not the next. So if you don't check them out, you're taking a risk.
Fascinating story. Thank you so much, Scott Cohn.